Everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily show YouTube channel. The best way to support the show on this YouTube channel is to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and or share it with a friend. I hope that you guys enjoy this episode, and whichever way you choose to support the show, I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. I hope that today's message and episode brings some bit of positive change to your life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily show. I am your host, Emily Hayden, and today's guest is Greg Anderson. He is a ranger. He's into jiu-jitsu, black belt jiu-jitsu. He was a police officer, family man, business owner, and today he's here to share with us some of his insights, given that he was in the military for so long in one of the most elite special operations. He was a police officer for multiple years. He's owned a business. He has a family. He has so much incredible perspective to offer us in life in general, but especially given the position that a lot of people are in right now, given 2020 and the whole mandates and everything going on. So as somebody who has held these positions, he actually decided one day to create an Instagram video, and in this Instagram video he captioned it, "Are you doing the right thing?" And he made a message to his fellow police officers, really inspiring them to think about what it was that they were choosing to enforce. So what I'm going to do right now, before we even say hi to Greg, is I'm going to play a little bit of that video so that you guys can see it if you're watching on YouTube, or you can hear it if you're listening on the podcast. We're going to play about a minute of it. So I want you guys to hear this original message. If you'd like to see the original video, which has gotten millions of views, you can check it out on his Instagram. Just scroll back about a year. So here we go. We're going to listen to this message, and then we're going to hear a little bit more directly from him.
As a police officer, I'm compelled to make this video. I've been in law enforcement for 10 years, and I'm speaking to my peers, other fellow officers, people in any kind of law enforcement position. I've seen officers nationwide enforcing tyrannical orders against the people, and I'm hoping it's the minority of officers, but I'm not sure anymore, because every time I turn on the television, every time I look to the internet, I'm seeing people arrested or cited for going to church, for traveling on the roadways, for going surfing, opening their businesses, going to the park with their families, or doing nails out of their own house, using their own house as a place of business, and having undercover agents go there and arrest them and charge them with what? With a crime? I don't know what crime people are committing by doing nails in their own house, but we're seeing this more and more and more, and we need to start looking at ourselves as officers and thinking, is what I'm doing right? I want to remind you that regardless of where you stand on the coronavirus, we don't have the authority to do those things to people just because a mayor or a governor tells you otherwise. I don't care if it's your sergeant or your chief of police. We don't get to violate people's constitutional rights because somebody in our chain of command tells us otherwise. It's not how this country works.
All right, let's talk to the man of the hour, Greg Anderson. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Emily. And two things before we get started. You're my favorite new friend of 2021.
Aww, stop. Really?
No,
Did you say that to
awesome.
everyone?
We connected out at Ian Smith's event at the Attila's gym, and we made homie status pretty quick.
I know we did.
And then you flew out to Seattle and did some jiu-jitsu at my academy, and it was cool. So that's been my favorite part of this whole journey, is connecting with like-minded people across the country, and you're one of them, and it's cool. So thank you for having me on. And then also, I couldn't hear any of that audio on my end, so
no way.
It got picked up. If not, you'll have to.
Oh, no.
Cut that in.
You know what? I think I'm hearing it through my sound system. So I think the podcast should have just heard it.
Okay, cool.
So sorry that you had to sit there and watch that, but it was the part.
Well, believe it or not, I know what the video said,
right.
So I'm good.
You're okay. So you still remember. Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah,
take me back to that moment. How long had you been a police officer, and, what were some of the things that you were experiencing and seeing that led you to make a video saying that to other police officers?
So I was coming up on about a decade of service in law enforcement with a couple different agencies. I was a deputy for about 5 years, and then I switched to local law enforcement and was an officer with the Port of Seattle when I made that video. And so that day was just like any other day. I was on patrol. I was in my squad car driving around doing what you do when you're on patrol. And it got to a point where, if you remember, it was May of 2020 that I released that video.
Mm-hmm.
In the month or two preceding that, every time you picked up your phone or every time you turned on the news, you saw law enforcement officers being used as henchmen for mayors and for governors. And it became abundantly clear inside of the profession that we were being used as political tools and that we were being asked to enforce mandates that are not laws.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was sitting around the lunchroom with my fellow officers talking about this stuff, everybody was disgusted. Everybody was outraged. And it wasn't like, oh, we were kind of divided 80-20 or 70-30. No, it was 100% of police officers were shocked at what
Wow.
we were being asked to do. And then that particular day, I was scrolling through my phone and I saw a video of some young ladies being arrested out of the basement of their home for doing nails. I believe that was in Texas. I don't know if you remember that story or not.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. And
Texas of all
so
places. What?
Texas, yeah, remember in the beginning, everybody was on board with
Yeah.
this mass wave of tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God some of the governors saw it for what it was and pulled the reins in. But I live in Seattle or just north of Seattle. So obviously I'm in a pretty liberal area.
Mm-hmm.
And what we saw is officers using their powers the powers that are granted to them by the state to enforce law. They were being asked to enforce the mandates.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that that was unconstitutional. I believe that it is outside of our jurisdiction, outside of our authority.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw those ladies getting arrested, I was like, if cops don't stand up soon and take the position that everybody holds in their heart, but everybody's afraid to articulate because you know it's going to happen. They're going to try and drop the hammer on you and get you out of there because they don't want people that are willing to stand against the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, you know what? I need to speak to fellow officers about what is happening because everybody believes this, but we need to become public with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hopeful that it would start a movement. And I articulated exactly that. I said, guys, this is outside of our authority. We don't have the legal or constitutional authority to deprive people of their constitutional rights,
Mm-hmm.
of their liberties. And I just stated all of those facts in the video. And I said, what you are going to do by following a mayor's mandate or a governor's mandate is you are going to turn the public opinion against us. And remember, this was pre-George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
And so cops weren't widely or nationally considered the bad guys yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I need to take a stand and I need to try and give people the courage to stand against these mandates. And I mean, that was exactly it because a law needs to be legislated.
Mm-hmm.
A governor or a mayor can't just arbitrarily come up with these ideas and say, you can't go to the park anymore.
Right.
You can't do this. You can't do that. Shut your business down.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, there was a lot of factors that played into it. But when you look at what was going on, at least in Washington, it became clear who was essential and who was deemed not essential was very politicized.
Mm-hmm.
And the businesses that padded the pockets of the government were somehow deemed essential.
Mm-hmm.
Marijuana shops could stay open. Liquor stores could stay open.
Wow.
Anything that was a government agency, like renewing the tags on your truck, that was essential. Going to the gym was not essential.
Mm.
And so I'd had it. And I said, you know what, guys, it is time to stand against this. We don't serve the government
Mm-hmm.
as law enforcement officers. We
Mm.
serve the citizens.
Wow.
That is who we swear to uphold.
Mm-hmm.
And that message resonated with millions and millions of people.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the point where my inbox was just plugged full with supportive messages. But the interesting thing is half of that was law enforcement. They're like, finally, someone said what we're all thinking, and we really appreciate you. But living in Washington State, I got terminated almost immediately
from that video.
Yeah. And so it was an interesting situation because right out of the gates, my commander sent me a message He sent me a text message. He goes, Greg, I just saw your video. Powerful message. That's the right thing. You're standing up for the right thing, and I support you 100%. And I have that text message in my phone to this day for those that want to see it.
Yeah.
And then 3 hours later, he called me back and he goes, hey, Greg, I was just notified that your video is crested over 400,000 views. And we have been directed to tell you it has to come down.
Oh,
and
wow.
I said, okay. And to this day, I'm unclear of where that directive came from because he was the highest ranking person in patrol.
Oh.
Now, the chief of police was also someone that was in my corner that really liked me. I had a good relationship with. And I've heard through the rumor mill that it came from the governor's office, but that's a rumor mill. So I can't confirm or deny that. But he called me back and he goes, yeah, we've been directed to tell you to take it down. And I said, well, here's the thing, sir, because I still had to call him sir for the next 2 hours.
Right.
I said that video, inside the video, I literally stated your morals, your ethics, and your integrity have to stand above your paycheck.
Wow.
I don't care if you're getting paid 100,000 a year or 500,000 a year. To do something or stand for something that is against your moral conscience is something that police officers cannot do. And you telling me to rescind my words about supporting liberty and rights, I said that goes against my conscience because I feel that that is something I should be willing to fight to the death for. And as you mentioned in the intro, I have 14 overseas combat deployments with different special operations units. And my entire youth was dedicated to fighting for what we were told at the time, people's freedoms, the Iraqi people's freedoms, the Afghanis' freedoms. And I said, I feel like I'm going to fight for the American people's freedoms, and I will fight 10 times as hard. So the video remains. And if you want to fire a good officer, I never had any negative counseling. I never had any complaints from citizens. My record was clean as a police officer. And, I was on a special boat team and I was asked to join SWAT. Like I have a good resume as a police officer. And none of that mattered at that point. As soon as the governor's office didn't like my message, that was it for me. And so they fired me. Well, firing in law enforcement is a long drawn out process. So I was immediately put on leave and it took about 3 months to investigate me. Through the investigation, they said, I'm being terminated for insubordination because I was asked to remove the video and I said no.
Wow.
And I'll tell you what, we could do a whole nother podcast on this, but following my heart and standing behind my convictions has rewarded me tenfold.
That's exactly where I want to go. That's exactly where I want to go with it. Yeah.
My life the trajectory of my life changed dramatically. And not only am I feel more complete, like spiritually and emotionally, the relationship with my family is better, but my business exploded. And now, you've seen my gym. You saw how packed the gym was. I'm more financially successful right now with my gym by 2 times than I ever was as a police officer. And I don't say that to boast or, oh, look at me. I say that because I think it is important for first responders. Well, now it's everybody. It's union workers, it's teachers, anybody that is on the chopping block for standing up for what you believe. Just know the government is not the end all be all. And now that I'm standing on my own 2 feet and I'm making my own choices and I've taken the wheel of my life and I'm taking it in a direction that I see fit, it's been the most rewarding thing that's ever happened. So it's been a real cool journey.
That is incredible. Wow. And I love interviewing podcasters because you guys already know, you just take the lead and you go and you give me everything I'm looking for in one answer. I'm like, yes, this is perfect.
Well, and that is another byproduct of this situation is Andy Stump. Do you know who he is?
Yeah,
he
I've heard
runs
him.
the Cleared Hot podcast. It's a pretty big platform. He had me on a couple times and I developed a friendship with him. And through his show, a lot of people are like, that was a really fun interview. You should think about doing your own show. So I did exactly that. And we're on episode 73.
Wow.
My podcast is called The Endless Endeavor. And as you know, as a podcaster, I don't care if my podcast ever generates 1 cent. What's fun about it is connecting with people, sharing stories, and hearing about people's lives that I think is lost in today's society. Like, how often do people just sit down for an hour and talk to each other about life?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's been one of the most rewarding aspects of this whole deal for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible. And yeah, it's called The Endless Endeavor. So everybody make sure and subscribe. It'll be linked down below. Man, so much I feel like we could get into right now. I love your perspective personally, because like you said, you were a ranger, you have multiple overseas operations, right? And you're literally fighting for freedoms, right? Like today we're all talking about fighting for freedom. And I say that in quotes because we're not literally having to fight, but you've actually had that experience. So for you to recognize what's going on here and say, we have to fight for this, the fight might look a little different in America and in the current times that we're in. But I think it's just so ultimately important, because the second that we lose even just one freedom, right? Because right now we're talking about medical freedom and losing that freedom. And it's like, if we let this go, we know they're going to take other freedoms from us. It doesn't stop with one freedom. They're not going to say, oh, we're good, we're just going to take that one freedom. It's going to continue. And I think what people maybe don't grasp yet is that right now it's medical freedom, but later it may be a different freedom, and a freedom that you don't personally want to lose. And so I think that's why it's so important for us to recognize that and to stand against it. So as you were, putting out this video, when you put it out, did you know that this was probably going to cost you your job?
I didn't know that it would, but I knew, I mean, I understand the profession that I was in, and I know that there's a lot of politics inside of law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know what direction it would go. To tell you the truth, when my commander sent me that text message that said, "We support you,"
Mm-hmm.
that was like a little sigh of relief,
Yeah,
because it's like, okay, I'm standing up for what I believe to be morally correct,
Mm-hmm.
and my agency supports me. So that was pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about fighting for our freedoms is I've lived in countries where people do not have freedom. I've lived in countries where if people disagree with you,
Mm-hmm.
they will kill you. And I know that sounds dramatic, but a large percentage of the world still lives by that rule set. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I saw Americans' freedoms getting stripped away, one thing that I was concerned about is Americans inherently have a spirit of defiance in them. That was what this country was founded on,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, how far will American citizens be pushed before they do turn to violence,
Mm-hmm.
before they do turn to physical resistance? And I was thinking, like, I've spent enough time inside of war zones. The thought of seeing any of that stuff on my streets, it scares me. I have 3 small daughters who you've met,
Mm-hmm.
and the last thing that I want them to experience is a society that is in turmoil, a society that is lawless,
Mm-hmm.
because I know what that feels like. I know how dangerous that is. And as a young ranger, yeah, bring it on. You know what I mean? That was that was what we were trained to do. But for the people in my life that are not of a warrior mindset, the thought of taking America in that direction was scary to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I articulated that in the video too. I said the last thing that we want to do is push the public to a point where they turn against law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have these conflicting sides. And that should scare people, because lawlessness, for anybody that thinks, oh, defund the police and we don't need laws and all that, that sounds cool to say. And that might be cool in like the movie The Purge. But when you live that life, every single second of the day, you have to be switched on. You have to be aware. You have to have operation orders to go anywhere. I mean, when I lived in Ramadi in '04, we were attacked on average 40 times a month.
Wow. Oh my
And
gosh.
and people think that that can't happen here.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, the human being, all you have to do is pick up a history book of any period of time. Human beings, there is a percentage of people that are inherently violent, and they are inherently dangerous, and they are inherently evil. And if we allow those people to do what the things that they want to do, it only takes 1 or 2% of the population that is behaving in a manner like that would turn the American society into absolute anarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not what this country is about. We are about law and order and respect and taking care of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was heavy on my heart, because it's like, I don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility for Americans to get pushed to the point where they do say, you know what, the government's taken everything from me. I don't have the ability to feed my family anymore,
Hmm.
and I got to look out for myself now. And however I do that, that's fine. Let's go.
Right. I think it's really important what you're mentioning here because there's a lot of people that I feel like they're either choosing ignorance or they genuinely don't realize that evil does exist and that it's
Yep.
manifested in people and in people's actions. And I feel like with your experience and background, you've been able to see that evil in people, manifested in people, like literally up front and close. So I think it's important to talk about it because these people that are making these like woke new, ways of living and life, and I think that what they're doing is they're making these rules or agreements or suggestions or mandates or whatever based on maybe how they feel or what, their positive outlook in the world, right? But it's like you can't count on people to operate and behave and think and, live in this world the way that you do because evil does exist and they do not operate by the same rules that you exist by, right? So you say like, oh, no guns, we're going to abolish guns. You think all the bad guys are not going to carry their guns on them?
It's ridiculous.
You think that they're registered? You think that they go through all, right? Like they're not going to be like, oh, there's a law, so let me not do it.
Well, and here's the ironic thing is all of these people that are saying they don't want cops, defund them, they don't want laws and they don't want rules, they'll be the first people begging for police intervention when
Mm,
someone's carjacking them or
yeah.
kicking down the door of your house. And this is what I always tell people, like, I've been a warrior my entire life. I have a network of people around me that come from similar backgrounds. We all have 20,000 rounds of 5.56. I have 10 AR-15s. I have
Wow.
body armor. I have night vision. I have capability, right?
You're
If this
prepared.
world descends into chaos, I know that me and my family will be okay.
Mm,
But that doesn't mean that that's something that I want to experience.
right.
But a lot of the people that are pushing this narrative and this agenda, they have no idea what they're in store for if they want to continue this path. And I mean, my video was May 5th of 2020. Here we are, a year and a half later. Seattle has lost half of their police officers.
Mm.
Response times are now over 1 hour.
No way.
In Seattle. Think about that. Think if someone is breaking into your house or your friend is getting raped or some type of violent crime that needs interdiction, you have 1 hour before officers might arrive. What does that tell
Mm,
you? That tells you no one is coming to save you now.
yeah.
And you better be prepared to handle things yourself. And that's exactly what I didn't want because
Yeah.
most people shouldn't have to be ready to
Mm-hmm.
defend themselves with
Mm-hmm.
violence,
Right.
you know?
Right. So let's
One
get
thing,
in. Yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead. One thing that you said that was interesting is you said, if they take this freedom, then what's the next one?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the one after that?
Mm-hmm.
And that is no longer a theory. That is fact.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the progression of this thing, it was
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks to flatten the curve, social distance and wear a mask,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay, well, now actually shut your business down. And now we're going to shut your schools down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to partake in society, these are the rules you have to abide by.
Mm-hmm.
And it's progressed to the point where if you don't play by our rules, we're firing you.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't, it started with first responders, police officers, firefighters, teachers,
Mm-hmm.
anyone that was their salary was directly paid by the government, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now they're infiltrated the unions. Um, I live close to Boeing here
Mm-hmm.
north of Seattle. Half of my friends work for Boeing. And now they've been told the same thing, get the vaccine or get fired because that's the president's mandate. This is affecting everybody. It started slow and it's slowly gained momentum. Think if they came out of the gates and said, you know what, everybody has to get this vaccine or they're fired, there would have been instant pushback.
Mm-hmm.
But because I always use the frog in the pot analogy, they're just turning up the heat incrementally and it's reaching a boiling point and people don't even know they're being cooked. And
Yeah.
it's a crazy time that we're living in where our government holds all the power because our government is for the people, by the people, of the people,
Mm-hmm.
right? We don't serve these political elites.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are holding positions of power are supposed to serve us.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody, I mean, you only have to have your eyes open for 10 minutes to see that the American political structure has become self-serving.
Mm-hmm.
Those people
Absolutely.
are in it, those people are in it for themselves. people are doing a term in Congress and becoming millionaires. And then they go out and give speeches at colleges and they're getting paid $400,000. Like, it is dirty.
Wow.
And to tell you the truth, I mean, I think the system needs a massive overhaul. I don't know exactly what that is, but if you look at the system as it sits right now, it brought us here. So
Mhm.
obviously it's inherently broken in some form.
Yeah, no kidding. That's such a good point. Like, because I always tell people, look at where we're currently at and try to ask yourself, where does this road lead? And I love that you have the perspective of the road we were on led here. So that
Yeah.
back there is broken. That back there needs updating.
And obviously I lean conservative. I'm
Mhm.
more of a libertarian because my political views are along the lines of you do you and I'll do me.
Yeah.
And talking to all of my friends and family and people that I surround myself with, nobody cares what race you are.
Hmm.
Nobody cares who you share your bed with.
Hmm.
Nobody cares what God you worship. All of these things that they're pitting us against each other on
Hmm.
are pretty much fabricated.
Hmm.
You know, I never saw racism as a police officer, but they push that narrative to the point where everybody thinks cops are racist now.
Yep.
And it's their divide and conquer campaign is working.
Yeah.
And, we got the same people in DC that have been there for 50 years. This shouldn't be a right versus left issue. We need fresh perspectives. We
Hmm.
need people that are in touch with the current society, with
Hmm.
the current economics, like the current military strategies, all the things that make our society run.
Hmm.
I feel like we need young, fresh perspectives in. And the thing that's frustrating to me is look at what makes society run. It's made up of our first responders, our
Hmm.
educators,
Hmm.
our entrepreneurs, our small business owners, our artists. Like, there's all these different facets of society that everybody contributes to.
Hmm.
But when you look at our political leaders, they don't have any of those things in their background. They were never entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
They were never small business owners. Many of them never served in any type of capacity. And so you have a lot of people that are making laws and mandates that I feel are completely out of touch with the actual American citizen.
Those are the exact words I was thinking in my head, was just they're out of touch. If they don't have any of those real experiences themselves and they don't have any points of contact with these real life things that you go through in these different positions, how can they possibly advise on that, right? It's kind of
And
like, when you come into a company and you just hire someone as VP that has never been a part of the brand, never been a part of the company, doesn't understand how it works, they're going to have a completely different operating system than somebody that maybe started at the bottom and worked every single position on the way up. Right? They're going to have more understanding. They're going to have more compassion. They're going to have more knowledge and expertise. So I think what you're saying is such a huge and really valid point, that we need people in there that have the real experience, that can offer a perspective of somebody who's been through it.
of course. And again, through this journey over the last year, I've made so many contacts and met a lot of people. I see your First Form cup there.
What's up?
I'm
What's
rocking
up?
I'm rocking the First Form shirt. And the reason I bring them up particularly is like Andy and Sal started from the bottom
Mm-hmm.
and they built something incredibly successful and incredibly special.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they're leading from their heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can see what real leadership is in
Mm-hmm.
the corporate world. I don't know if you've heard of Vortex Optics,
Yeah.
amazing company. So Sal Frisella just introduced me to the president of that company last
Dope.
week. And I heard he started with that company filling boxes in the warehouse and he worked his way up to the president, right?
Wow.
And I like hearing stories like that and connecting with people like that is because they started from the bottom and then they made it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in order to hold validity in your opinion, you have to have those experiences as a
Yeah.
person to be able to now you are in a leadership position and now your words hold merit. And we're not seeing that. We're not seeing that in politics.
Yeah, I don't understand how you could ever lead or teach in something that you don't have direct experience in. I feel like, I'm a coach and a mentor myself. And one of the number one rules is I will never sit up here and speak or give advice on something that I have not personally experienced and walked through in my life.
Of
Right.
course.
It's like me giving parenting advice. I don't have children, so that wouldn't make any sense. I wouldn't have any way to be able to do that. I think it's just really
Although
important.
I see you killing it as an auntie.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, they're the greatest. I have 11. And I'm a dog mom, so that counts too.
Yeah, yeah. But and I talked about this on my show just last episode.
Mhm.
Like I have 155 jiu-jitsu students, and
Wow.
half of them are kids. And so I have a room full of, I had 19 kids at practice last night.
Mhm.
And you have these 9 to 12-year-olds looking to you for guidance,
Mhm.
looking to you to build them up, to make them stronger, more resilient people. And even though they're children, it is a powerful lesson in leadership, learning how to talk to those kids, how to
Mhm.
guide them. Because in order for them to buy off on what I'm telling them to do, they have to respect me as a person first.
Mhm.
And and I was joking. I was like, most of our politicians have probably never even ran a class with 20 kids in it,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
the lowest level of leadership. And in the military, you gain leadership incrementally. You start as a private, so you're at the bottom of the totem pole. Everybody's telling you what to do.
Mhm.
But by being a follower first, you learn
Mhm.
what good, competent leadership looks like.
Mhm.
So from the time I was a 19-year-old private, I remember looking at certain sergeants thinking, wow, that guy knows how to motivate me.
Mhm.
That guy knows how to make me be a better ranger.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't know how long your podcasts are, but I have a direct story about that
Please, yeah, I'd love to hear it.
that that to this day, and it wasn't like some huge occurrence, but I had an epiphany where I messed up as a private, and I
Mhm.
don't even remember what I did, but I had just got a new sergeant. He walked into my room and he goes, "Greg, sit down." And what I thought was going to happen is I was going to have to do push-ups and burpees until I threw up,
Mhm.
because that's what happens when you mess up as a private in the Ranger Regiment.
Mhm.
And he sits me down and he goes, "Listen to me. What you did was unacceptable. But more importantly than it being unacceptable, it reflects on our team as a whole because you were part of my team.
Mhm.
And when you make a mistake and it makes our team look bad, it makes me look bad. And I don't like looking bad. I want our team to be varsity. All
Mhm.
right. So please do not let that happen again." And, and then he walked out and I wanted to cry right there. Like, I was a strong ranger. I could do push-ups for the next hour, right? I
Mhm.
didn't care about that. That didn't touch me emotionally or make me want to be better.
Mhm.
But when he articulated basically that I let him down,
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh no.
Mhm.
I got to tighten up my shot group."
Mhm.
And that was a very important leadership lesson that I carried once I became a sergeant,
Mhm.
because the most important thing that you can have as a leader is having your subordinates believe in who you are as a person,
Mhm.
believe in who you are as a man, and respect you for who you are, not for the chevrons that are on your collar.
Mhm.
And I think even though when I left the military, I only had a team underneath me, right? I didn't command brigades or regiments. I don't have vast leadership experience like Jocko does,
Mhm. Mhm.
But I always tell people, it doesn't matter if you're leading 5 people or 300 people.
Mhm.
The principles are the same.
Absolutely.
And I think that the principles are lost in our politicians.
Mm. What do you think are some core principles of leadership that makes a good leader? Like, so I would imagine maybe, I'm sure you've had some negative leadership experiences in the military and then some
Oh yeah.
positive leadership experiences that you've had. What are some differing factors that make a leader a good quality leader?
I think the biggest thing that a leader can have
Mm-hmm.
is loyalty to his subordinates.
Mm.
Loyalty meaning, if you're doing the right thing, I'm going to be in your corner no matter what.
Oh,
And
that's dope.
that lesson is learned on the battlefield in real time,
Mm.
because if you make mistakes on the battlefield, it can cost people their lives.
Mm.
And so you have to know that the people that are above you, that are asking you to go kick a door in
Mm-hmm.
or fast rope onto a building, you have to know in your heart, the person that is asking me to do this is 100% in my corner. And if things go bad, they will move heaven and earth to take care of me.
Wow.
Once you have that kind of belief in
Mm-hmm.
the person that is in a leadership position above you, you will give your life for that person.
Mm.
I have friends that are not here with us anymore because they charged through doors and tried to take down machine gun bunkers inside of buildings. Like, people can be extremely courageous, and they can be they will sacrifice themselves if they believe in the mission. But in
Wow.
order to believe in the mission, you have to know that the people that are above you that are asking you to do this love and support who you are as a person first. And so once I became a sergeant, I made it. I know the military, it's a fine line you have to walk because you don't want to be all buddy buddy with everybody that's underneath you. But at the same time, you need to know who they are. You need to know their families. You need to know their kids. And so I went out of my way to get to know my guys. And we would do like team barbecues on the weekends. I knew their wives. I knew their kids. Because guess what? We're going to Afghanistan in 6 weeks.
Wow.
It's important that we have an actual bond. And once I left the Ranger Regiment, I never saw that again. I never saw it in law enforcement. And you don't see it in most of the corporate world. But again, to circle back, when I walked into First Form, it gave me that old Ranger Regiment feeling.
Wow. I just got chills.
Yeah, no, it gave me chills too. I was getting emotional walking around because you've been there. It's, what is that facility? 300,000 square feet or something?
Massive. Yeah.
Every single person that I walked around and I was introduced to, they shook my hand. They had a smile on their face and their soul was alive. You could see it in their eyes. And it was like, man, this is what competent leadership makes people feel like. And those people would go to the ends of the earth to make sure that First Form is successful. And what I don't understand is it is not a difficult concept to understand. So why do so many corporations and agencies not implement that? Most what I saw in law enforcement, a lot of the leaders are self-serving. They care about their career path. They care about their promotion packets. And I had people, even my chief of police was begging me, Greg, you need to be a leader in this agency. I want to promote you to sergeant. Put in for sergeant. Put in for sergeant. And it's like, I'm not ready to put in for sergeant because I need to build myself as a police officer to the best that I can be before I can lead others. But the thing is, people that are hesitant to promote are usually the ones that should promote. And the people that are always raising their hand, me, promote me, they inevitably work their way up the food chain, but they're not ready for it. And then they turn into terrible leaders. And I make a jujitsu analogy to everything because as a black belt, I am the leader of the academy, right? But I didn't ask for a black belt. When I got promoted to black belt, I was like, oh no, now the eyes are going to be on me, right?
Yeah.
And it made me realize leadership should feel like a burden. No matter what level of leadership, when you get promoted, there should be some butterflies in your stomach because the expectations on you are now higher and more people are counting on you to do the right thing. And once people are counting on you to do the right thing, that shouldn't feel like a walk in a park. That should feel heavy on you. And unfortunately, our society has gotten away from putting competent leaders in the correct positions to make these agencies and these government entities successful.
You know, I've found it far and few in between finding good, confident leadership or even incredible, strong, men that have good character. I mean, I'm telling you what, I lived in LA for the last 7 years and I just moved back to Texas. But finding people of strong character, willing to stand on their values and have integrity and, willing to fight for something and willing to believe in something and put their foot down and to really represent that strong leader, it's hard to find, to be honest. And even for me, I operate with a certain level of core values, right? So things like integrity is like one of the most important things to me, loyalty, accepting personal responsibility. And for me, it's actually been hard in my personal relationships to find people that operate at the same level. And I think I told you this, but I find it interesting that the people that I really do connect with end up being like military or, law enforcement or someone that's in a position where they have to uphold these core values, right? And to circle back to what you said about First Form, I think that's one thing that makes First Form really stand out is that they live and breathe their core values. They don't just write something really fancy and cute on the website that might draw people in. Every single one one of those people at headquarters, the athletes, the legionnaires, they live and breathe those core values. And I think when you take personal ownership and responsibility to operate by a standard of excellence, always, that's what you're going to produce in your life. That's what you're going to produce in any position that you uphold. One thing with leadership that I personally have found is so important is, as the leader, taking personal responsibility. So for me, even with, the small people, the small team that I have, if there's mistakes that are being made, I immediately say, I didn't communicate something properly, or I didn't set them up for success, right? So as a leader, I'm always taking personal responsibility for the outcome not being what I wanted, because I know full well if I have the right team, if I have them, skilled and with good hearts and they're committed to everything, that if we're not getting the result that we're looking for, that comes back on me. And then I figure out, okay, how can I set them up for success next time? And every time that I've done that and set up a different plan and set them up for success, all of a sudden we start being successful. So I really realized that personal responsibility and ownership and being the person to lead the way with your actions, not just your words, is one of the most important things that you could do as a leader, because similar to children, they're not going to do what you say, they're going to do what they see, right? So whether it's a leadership position or in a parenting role, whatever it is, your actions, I think, are one of the most important things.
Of course. And you have to have humility. And that's what that is. Because here's the reality of being a human being. I don't care what position you're in, you are going to make mistakes. I say this on my show all the time. I am waiting for the day when a politician gets up to the podium and says, listen, guys, I made some errors and the calculations that I came up with were not correct. I was operating off of the facts that I had at the time. And at the time, in good faith, I made this decision, but hindsight is 2020, and I made an error.
Wow.
And this error cost us this, or this error led to this problem. And I can recognize that as a person. And what I can do right now is ask that you guys still believe in me, that you give me some grace. And this is how I plan to get us out of this problem that I inherently created. We don't hear that ever.
Greg Anderson, 2024.
if
That's
you
awesome.
don't have a leader that is willing to admit mistakes, they are not a leader, period. Like in the military, as a young private in the Ranger Regiment, they have the leadership acronym. And I haven't said this out loud in 2 decades, but it's loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. Those are the values that they expect you to live by as a Ranger. And the thing is, none of those concepts are very difficult to grasp. And one thing that they used to preach to us, they said, no matter what situation you were confronted with, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how many different factors you have to weigh in on, in your heart of hearts, you always know what the right answer is.
Wow.
Very, very often the right answer will be the more difficult answer. But you know what it is in your heart, and you always have to do the right thing. And it's like, that sounds kind of cliche, do the right thing. But everybody listening right now, when they're confronted with problems in their marriage, with their work, with their children, you know in your heart what the right thing is. Sometimes you allow emotions to overshadow that and control your actions and control your decisions. But you have to know in your heart that you made a mistake. And if you know that, then you have to articulate that. And that's what gives you leadership capital. People that when you stray from your leadership principles and you make mistakes, by having humility, admitting that, and trying to get everybody back on the right track, that is what makes any operational element successful. And like I said, it seems to be lost. And I don't know, part of me feels like the root of this problem is there's just too many moving parts of society these days. There's too many people, like we're crammed on top of each other. We have millions of people. Like I lived in LA for 5 years as a deputy down there. I was in law enforcement down there too. And it's the same thing. And I feel like to have a governor in charge of millions of people, or a president in charge of 350 million people, like in order to hold real leadership capital, you have to be able to look at people. You have to look them in their eyes. They have to trust you. And I just don't know if it's feasible anymore. And the current American system, you know?
Yeah. And, you mentioned this earlier, how we have a lot of self-serving leaders and political figures. And I feel like the society in general, just the way that this generation is going, is very self-serving. Like, look at even just social media, right? People learn to curate their feeds based on feedback, based on how will people press the like button? Will they comment something? Will this get me more followers? So everything they're doing is serving themselves, even in social situations. Who has a lot of followers and how can I be friends with them and what can I get from them, right? There's this self-serving mentality that I think is really ingrained in us on so many different levels. We have society right now telling us that, hey, as long as you're doing something that doesn't hurt anyone, physically, it doesn't hurt anyone in that way, do whatever it is that you would like to do and do it as often as you would like to do it, right? But I always say, well, yes, you could. It's not always the wise thing, because is that thing that you're participating in, is it hurting your soul? Right? And at what cost? And are you hurting other people's soul? Right? So I think it's important that we don't fall into this trap of having everything you want all the time, whenever you want it, just because you can, right? There's wisdom in knowing when to have, self-control. There's wisdom in knowing, how to show up for yourself and for others. So I think the more that we can accept, personal responsibility, we can have humility, like you're saying, the further we get away from that self-serving attitude and the closer we get to being of service to people, whether it's just people in our community and our certain, networks, or if it's in the actual, communities as in the country. So I think the more work that we do on ourselves, the better we can be for everybody overall. So, what do you feel like is something that's helped you personally with stepping outside of that emotion, like you were talking about, and stepping into like clearly thinking about, okay, what is best for me and my family, or how can I take ownership in this, situation? Because I think a lot of people get really lost in their emotions. So what's something that helps you get out of your emotion and into logic?
For me, one thing that kind of my approach to being a successful father, a successful husband, a successful leader of my academy is, and I mean, I'm 41. I'm walking this path right now, and I don't have all the answers. I'm trying to figure them out as I go.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that has helped me tremendously is when I feel like I'm losing touch with who I am, or I'm not operating at an optimal level, I have to bring it back inside of me
Mm-hmm.
and focus on me. And I have to make sure that I am the best version of myself first.
Mm-hmm.
Then I can be the best version of myself as a father, as a husband, as a leader. And that is why, and I know like some people probably think that this is strange, but I always do challenges that are completely personal. They are for me.
Yeah.
But what it does is it hones my discipline, it hones my resolve,
Yeah.
and it makes me feel proud of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I feel like I am on the right trajectory for my own life,
Mm-hmm.
now I feel like that's how I am a better person for the other people in my life.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of things that I do regularly. Like I sit in the sauna at 215 degrees until I'm about to pass out.
Mm-hmm.
I'll sit in the ice tub, and these are just mental challenges. And people that may not implement these in their life, it may sound crazy, but fill a tub up with ice water at 35 degrees and sit in there for 15 minutes. And what that does for me is it constantly hones my own discipline and my own resolve. I also get a lot of that on the jiu-jitsu mats, because when you're grappling another human being that is trying to beat you, you are facing adversity, you are facing fear, you are dealing with problems both physically and emotionally at the same time.
100%.
And if people haven't trained, they might not understand how powerful that is.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what it is when you have someone that's outweighs you by 50 pounds, they're on top of you and your face is covered and you can't breathe. We have that fight or flight mechanism inside of us. And I don't care how tough you are, everybody has that in them at some point. And what you have to do is you have to face physical and emotional adversity on a regular basis. And once you start doing that, you start to become a more whole, complete version of yourself spiritually. And, I talk about it all the time in my show. Like half of my show is about jiu-jitsu, because jujitsu hones me into being a more complete person.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I think. And I think a big problem in our society right now is that people don't face regular adversity,
Mm.
because the human experience, literally from the beginning of mankind, was you would be starving until you went and harvested an animal, or you went and foraged through the woods and found enough plants and berries to feed your family.
Mm-hmm.
You would be freezing to death in the winter if you didn't chop enough wood and you didn't build a sufficient enough shelter.
Mm.
Your security would be in danger if the rival tribe on the other side had a problem with you and they wanted to take over your land. Like, all of these things were part of the human experience everywhere on planet Earth. And so we were constantly being balanced, meaning we would have to face hardship. And then once we succeeded in hardship, we would have the joy of
Mm-hmm.
of that successful hunt or that successful battle.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that that's an inherent part of who we are. But because most people don't face adversity like we did, and this isn't ancient times, this was 100 years ago,
Right.
all the way back to the beginning of time. In the last 100 years, we now live in climate controlled buildings. We
Mm-hmm.
drive our cars everywhere. Our fridges have enough food in them to feed us for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we are now fabricating adversity in our minds and in our society because we don't have enough of it in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest catalysts of fabricating that adversity is through social media.
Mm.
And so, like, one thing that I am adamant about is I do not get in negative arguments with people on
Mm-hmm.
social media.
Mm-hmm.
That is an absolute waste of time. But my social media blew up now, and I have like 90,000 followers, which isn't necessarily a lot, but I get a lot. Like, all of my pictures, all of anything I upload, I see people fighting for hours in my
Wow.
own comment thread. And it's like, if you're fighting with some guy who lives on the other side of the country, who you'll never meet because he shares a differing opinion on a social media platform, you are not getting the correct human experience.
Wow.
And that is why I think, like, our society is full of depression.
Mm-hmm.
People are anxious. People are on medication.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I lived in Afghanistan, I lived in Iraq for almost 5 years. I had buddies that served in Mogadishu. Like, you don't see these kind of problems in people. People aren't
Wow.
depressed. People aren't depressed over there. And the reason they're not depressed over there is because they got to worry about getting clean water
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that they do the right thing to make it to the next day.
This is mind blowing to me right now, just because the perspective you're able to offer on this is insane. I think it's something that needs to be heard, right? Because we're seeing this epidemic of depression and anxiety and mental health more than we've ever seen in our entire existence, right? And we have to start asking the questions of why and what are the things that might be causing this? And is it really all just all these babies being born just with depression as soon as they're born, right? And I just don't think that that's the case.
No, they're a result of their environment, you know?
Yeah.
And now we have a bunch of people that are metabolically sick.
Mm.
That, you know, I drive by my kids are in private school now because I can't stand the public school system.
Yeah.
But when I'm driving them to school, I look at all the other kids at the bus stops. They're all 6 feet apart with a mask on, staring at a cell phone, and half of them are obese.
Wow.
And it's like, they're 12 years old and they're metabolically sick and they don't even know it yet,
Mm.
you know? And think about that is their start to life, being isolated and being metabolically sick. Of course, they're going to turn into depressed adults looking for quick, easy solutions.
Mm-hmm.
The solution is not taking a pill
Mm-hmm.
or getting on some antidepressant. The solution is going to the track and running 400-meter sprints for the next 30 minutes until your body feels like it's going to die. Because you're an elite athlete, right?
Mm-hmm.
When have you ever, outside of an injury, because we've all been injured training, but even to this day, I've been training since I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be lacing up my shoes, going to the track, and I'm thinking, God, I don't want to do this.
100%.
This sucks. It's raining out. It's cold. there's a new show on Netflix that I want to catch up on, like all the things that everybody's tempted to indulge in. I'm just as tempted. But once you give yourself that discipline and say, nope, for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to torture myself. The second you're done, you feel like a champion.
Amazing.
Like there's never been tell me about a run that you went on that as soon as you're done, you're like, man, I wish I didn't do that run.
Not once.
I wish I sat in bed and watched Squid Games.
Right. Oh my gosh.
You know, but this is the interesting thing is most people in today's society, they don't understand that is how you are going to feel once you push yourself and you put yourself through that adversity. And that is why I think athletics in youth is probably one of the most important things we could offer to turn the society around. Because when you're in athletics, and I wasn't a good athlete as a kid, and I was an athlete through middle school. I did track and wrestling, and then I did it through my freshman year. And then I found girls and beer and was like, fuck going to practice.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Can I not
Of
swear?
course. No, you can. You can.
My show has a parental advisory warning just in case people are going to.
I need to add it. Mine says clean, but it's not. And somebody commented like, this was not clean lyrics. I was like, my bad.
Yeah. No, I have no filter on my show.
Yeah.
But I learned all those lessons as a young ranger. And the reason that I know that I should have learned them through on the football field or on the basketball court is because the guys that were in Ranger Regiment with me that had an extensive background in athletics, they had a leg up on us that didn't. They understood the team dynamics of working hard. They understood that I have to wake up in the morning and I have to start the grind hard. And I eventually got there. But what I saw with the Rangers that came from a strong athletic background, they were already there when they showed up at boot camp.
Wow.
And so that was a good lesson for me because it's like for my kids, now that I'm a father, my children are 6, 9, and 12. Athletics has to be part of their life. You know, it's bizarre to me that our education system puts almost no emphasis on getting our children fit and healthy, even though, in my opinion, just like I said, seeing all the obese kids at the bus stop, staring at the ground, looking depressed, that is probably the biggest tool that we could teach our youth to put them on a successful trajectory to become successful adults.
Absolutely. I think it's really important to put yourself in a position where you go after a challenge that makes you want to quit. I always tell people, if you have not put yourself in a position and gone after something that makes you want to quit, you have not even gotten close to getting the real, value of what's inside of you. I really do believe that there is fight inside of everybody, but if they don't ever put themselves in a situation to bring that fight out, they're going to continue to stay small, stay weak, stay, submissive. And I think it's important now than ever to build your own confidence, build your own strength, and to show yourself the kind of fight that you actually have inside. And here's the thing, a lot of people, I think these days don't have those challenges. They don't have, whatever it is in their life that brings it out, whether it's like a military experience, a prep, and athletics or whatever. If you don't have that to bring that outside of you, you may think and have the perception that it's not inside of you. But I really do believe that, like you were mentioning, like we were literally born with this inside of us. So it's important to create it and to cultivate it within yourself and find ways inside of your life to bring it out. I know for myself, I really seek to put myself in positions that are uncomfortable or unfamiliar to me, because I've learned that those are the scenarios and environments where I learn and I grow and I become better. And here's the thing, I've never worried about sucking, because I'm always that person that like, I will work so freaking hard to get good at this eventually, that eventually my work and my effort is going to be enough. I won't have to say anything. Right. So I don't mind sucking. Like I'll go and suck at something, but I'll learn and I'll get better. And a year from now, I'll be way better than I was last year. Right. So we, kind of segueing in, I guess, into this uncomfortable scenario or challenging scenario that I'm talking about, you actually have a course called Guns and Geese, and it is designed to kind of share a little bit about like what it's for, why you created it, share your mission behind it, your heart behind it, just kind of give us a rundown on what that looks like.
So my two business partners, Joao Assis, who is a 7-time world champion grappler. He's one of the best grapplers on the planet Earth. and he's who I got my black belt from. And then my friend Greg Lappin, who is an elite firearms instructor. He also owns a jiu-jitsu academy, but he is probably the most proficient firearms instructor I have ever met in my life.
That's awesome.
And the three of us were hanging out, and we were talking about, man, what are people missing right now? And the conversation was very similar to the conversation that we've had over the last hour. And we said, well, here's the reality of shooting and fighting. You cannot get good at something in 3 days, period. Nobody ever got good at anything in 3 days. That's why when people ask me to run self-defense seminars, I will say no. I say, I'm not going to teach you something for 6 hours and then send you out into the world thinking that you have some type of capability. In fact, I think that is dangerous because you're giving people a false sense of security. Wow. So we're like, but people are in need of capability right now. Not only capability to be able to defend themselves and to be able to protect their family, but to face some of those things that we talked about and put yourself in difficult situations and build your resolve by facing adversity. So we said, well, this is what we should do then. We should run a 3-day course, and it's 3 hours on the firearms range, and then it's 2 hours on the mats, and it's 3 days of intense training. What we are hoping to get out of this is not building warriors in 3 days. What we are hoping to get out of this is to show people this is the path you need to be on to become a better person. And our camp, we've done 3 classes now. We have number 4 in March, which I'll send you the details to. I hope you attend.
Yeah, I would love to come.
And what we want to do is in 3 days, what can you give someone? You can't give them much of a skill set, but you can build a foundation. You can change the trajectory of their life. You can show them the importance of hard training and building yourself up and becoming a more capable person. And so we do all the training, right? We do our 3 hours in the range, 2 hours on the mat each day. But the most important part of the curriculum is each night we all get together and we have dinner together. We sit around a table and we talk about these things. And I'm telling you what, and this isn't like, oh, I guess I can give myself a pat on the shoulder because I'm proud of it. We have changed people's lives. People leave that course with a renewed fire inside of them to start training, to be better. I can't tell you how many students we've had that are like, back home, I don't have very many friends, and I'm 30 pounds overweight because I just don't have time to go to the gym anymore. And my kids don't respect me because I don't do anything with them and I just watch TV all the time. Like, all these people are getting stuck in this trap that is engulfing our society. And our whole mission is to teach them to break the cycle. And we have an alumni page where you have to graduate the course to be part of it. So we have, roughly 100 people in that now, and they keep each other accountable. And they're like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is the training I did today. This is the gym that I became a part of. I just signed up for my first tournament.
That's awesome.
And our last class, 25% of attendees were repeat customers, only on class 3.
Wow, that's awesome.
And our course comes with a gi too. So when you show up, we give you a gi, and we tell our students that the reason that you're getting a gi right now is because you're going to use it for the next couple days. But I want that gi to be sitting on the back of your couch a week from now. I want you to look at that gi and realize that I didn't get this gi to train in it for 3 days. I got this gi to start a new journey. So we want to send people out to wherever they live in the country to go back to their hometown, seek out a gym. Inevitably, by seeking out a gym, you're going to build relationships with the right people. You're going to build a circle of people. You're going to start to feel that tribal connection that's missing. And the proof is in the pudding. We have people that are like, dude, your Guns and Geese program literally saved my life.
I've seen those comments on your Instagram page.
Yeah, it's powerful because we are trying to get people back on track to what we need on a primal level. And it goes back to what I said, like, once you learn how to be good for yourself, that's when you can be good for your family.
Yeah.
And we had a guy attend last class. We all sit down together on day 1 and we're like, what made you want to attend? What do you hope to get out of it? what are some things in your life that has brought you to where you're at today?
Mhm.
And people are very raw emotionally.
Mhm.
And one guy said, he goes, I have two small boys, and I realized I grew up without a father, and I don't know how to be a man. And how
Wow.
can I be a man of my household when I don't really know how to be one, but I have these two young boys looking to me on how to grow into a man? And so he said, I attended because I felt like I look at your guys' resumes and the stuff that you have accomplished. Like, I believe in what you're saying and what you're selling. And that's why I'm here, because I want to be a better father when I get home. And I mean, that kind of stuff makes me emotional,
Mhm.
because that is what we're selling. I'm not
Mhm.
going to make you a fighter in a weekend.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
want to make you believe in yourself.
Yeah.
I want you to go back home and continue to grow as a person.
Mhm.
And if we can affect, me and Lappin and Joao always say, like, if at the conclusion of our course, one person goes home and changes the trajectory of their life,
Mhm.
and now they're becoming a better version of themselves, that's a success, right?
Mhm.
And that is also why our curriculum is like gym jujitsu, like just like what you got when you came and trained with me that
Yeah.
night.
Yeah.
That is how we run the course there. There's a lot of survival courses that are like, this is how you disarm a subject. This is how you fight someone with a knife.
Right.
And that, I'm not saying that there's not a place for that, but I feel like before you learn how to fight someone with a knife, you need to build your foundation first.
Mhm. Mhm.
You're going to build your foundation on the mats
Mhm.
with people that are electricians, that work at Boeing, that are nurses. They all come together and they all train. And once you develop proficiency, that's when you can start to expand your capability.
Right.
But I mean, you saw the vibes at my gym.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of everybody up
Mhm.
there. And nobody cares who's the toughest guy in the room.
Mhm.
Nobody cares who beats who. When we leave the gym at night, we feel like we're a better version of ourselves,
Mhm.
and that's winning, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like George St. Pierre, one of the greatest welterweights of all time, said, like, my goal as a martial artist is to go to sleep a better version of myself
Mhm.
than who I was when I woke up that morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be these giant leaps and bounds. It can be incrementally. If
Mhm.
you grow by a tenth of a percent,
Mhm.
you do that for 5 years, you're going to become a very capable person that you're proud of who you are.
Absolutely. It sounds to me like your entire life is surrounded around that entire principle of waking up and being that even just 1% better version of yourself, which, is the whole premise of my brand, and not just my brand, but the way that I live my lifestyle of evolving, right? Every single day, evolving into that next best version of yourself. So Guns and Geese, I am going to see if I can make those March dates work. I would love to be there for
Fourth, fifth, and sixth.
4th, 5th, and 6th. Okay. I want to say for all of my listeners, we have a lot of listeners all over. They've asked me about the different courses and things that I've done. So I would love if you guys wanted to join me on this. As soon as I have information or links from Greg, which may already be available, I'll place
I'll
them.
send them to
They
you when
are.
we're done.
Cool. Yeah. I'll place them in the show notes below so that you guys can check it out. It would be pretty dope to get, what if I have like a little girl squad there, right? From everyone from the
Hell
show.
yeah. Yeah.
Anyone listening, honestly, you guys are all welcome. I think that would be incredible. It's definitely right up my alley. And quickly, could you just kind of touch on, I understand the premise of your course, but could you just touch generally on preparedness and being prepared and being ready, right? Earlier, we talked about people that would be very capable if something kind of broke out, and people that would not be very capable. So what do you think is kind of a good reason to be prepared, or why do you think being prepared is important?
Well, the first thing I'll say is, if you are interested in becoming a more capable person, a buddy of mine named Mike Glover, do you know who he
Yeah.
is?
Yeah.
He owns a company called Fieldcraft Survival,
Mm.
and that is probably the best content on the internet to learn how to be capable and prepared. And none of his stuff, it comes from a place of fear. People
Mhm.
misconstrue people that prepare as people that are afraid.
Right.
And it's actually the opposite.
Hmm.
Preparedness is the antidote to fear.
Hmm.
And so, something we say in the military, in order to be successful in any type of combat engagement, there's three tiers: shoot, move, and communicate, right? So obviously, if you're confronted with violence, the shooting tier means exactly that. You have to be able to defend yourself and your family. And in today's modern world, that is understanding your way around a firearm, knowing how to use it, knowing how to employ it, knowing when to, and then also having the emotional capacity to use it. One of my pet peeves is when people are like, hey, I just bought a gun and I got my concealed carry permit and now it's in their waistband. And it's like, listen, that is your constitutional right. Nobody should be able to take that away from you. But if that is something that you are going to do, give yourself the opportunity to train, learn, understand it, and be proficient with it. Otherwise, it is going to be a detriment. Like a firearm is a tool. That's it. The fighter is the person.
Right.
And that's nothing that we really push, because we teach in our course, it is fundamentals of combat pistol and grappling. Don't think of, oh, over here we're shooting and over here we're grappling. Both aspects of the camp is developing yourself as a fighter. The tool is the firearm. The tool is jujitsu. So shooting, be proficient with your tools. Moving is your physical body or whatever vehicle or platform you're using to get from point A to point B. But people neglect that in today's world because, like in the Ranger Regiment, we're expected to walk 50 miles with a 60-pound pack. If I need to get from point A to point B for an operation and the DZ is fouled, we are walking there. You have to be able to be mobile. You have to be able to get where you want to get when you need to get there. And then the last thing is communicate. Because if you're doing these things alone, you will not be successful. No man can just stand on his own 2 feet and be successful in any type of non-permissive environment. And so communicate means you have to have the ability to communicate with other people. But more importantly than the ability to communicate with them through whatever comms network you've established, you have to have a network of people.
No
You
kidding.
have to have like-minded people that believe in your mission and you believe in their mission, and you're going to support each other. And so shoot, move, and communicate. You have to be able to have the right capabilities and the right people. And I get emails all the time. They're like, I don't have a network of people. I don't know how to establish a network of people. And I keep saying the same thing. Join a jiu-jitsu academy.
Yeah,
Join
no
a
kidding.
jiu-jitsu academy. Join a CrossFit gym.
Right.
But you have to put yourself out there with other human beings that exactly what you said 15 minutes ago, people that are willing to go through the fight. When you surround yourself with people that are willing to put themselves through the fight, you already know that person gets it. That person has the resolve to be on my team. And you just start to build your community from there. And I have a huge network of people locally, and they're all 90% of them. I'd say 10% of them are from guys I maintained relationships with through the military. The other 90 I've built locally because we have brought like-minded people together that want to support each other and want to have like that tribal community. But not only do you need to seek that, you need to nurture that. And so we go out of our way and we have barbecues together and like we're doing a tribe, we call it Tribe Fest. We're doing a Tribe Fest Thanksgiving.
That's
where
awesome.
like all of us are going to bond over a meal and just share our experiences and just build those relationships. I think building relationships with the right people is probably the most important aspect of any of this.
Yeah.
Because you can have 200 pounds of freeze-dried food in your garage, but if you don't have the right network of people, your food's probably going to become their food.
100%. That was literally on my mind. Me and my family, we always joke. We're like, yeah, we may not be the ones with like the cabin bunkers, but we know who they are. And they are, if they're isolating, it's now ours. You know what I mean?
And that might sound harsh to say, but I always say like human beings are 9 meals away from becoming savages.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah.
If my children haven't eaten a bite of food, my children haven't eaten a bite of food for 3 days and my neighbor has food in his garage, it's like, hey, we've always been friends. I respect you as a person. But at the end of the day, my children come first.
100%.
And everybody has that breaking point
Yeah.
to where they will violate maybe they'll behave in a way that is not congruent with who they typically are when they're faced with extreme adversity. everybody has that breaking point, and to think that you're different, I don't think you're being honest with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important what you're saying here. And that's one thing that I've loved about 2020 and this entire situation. There's a lot of negative things that have happened, but I think probably one of the best things that has happened is all of the new relationships that I've built. You kind of mentioned this, at the beginning, like you and I don't know that we would ever even meet or be talking had you not spoken out and had I not reached out and supported and been a part of that message. And so I think that's why it really is important to stand firm in your core values and what you believe to be true, and to network with other people doing that. The people that I find now that are lacking network usually are the people staying silent, and they think that they're the only ones feeling the way that they're feeling at their workplace or environment or, their church or their school or whatever it is. And the truth is, if you stay quiet, how do you expect to connect with the people that believe the same things that you believe? So I think
100%.
building those relationships can, like for me, when I sit back and actually look at the network that I've built, throughout my whole time, but just in the last year or so, it's kind of cool. Like I'm friends with some of the most badass people I think like in the world, and you're on that list, you know what I mean? And I'm like, that's pretty dope. Like that would have never happened, had I not stand true to my convictions as well, because there's a lot of people in my industry that, they pretend nothing is happening or they don't speak about it because initially on social media, it's not really popular to do, people throw you a lot of hate and think you're a horrible person and don't care about human souls, right? And which couldn't be further from the truth. So it takes a strong person to stand up and to say these things, and to stand firm in whatever you feel convicted to. But I think that the reward at the end is just so incredibly worth it. That's why I think people in your position who have maybe stood up and stood for what they believed in and lost their job, for the people doing that right now, even like, I mean, as we're talking, this is happening to people. I always say, like, I really do believe, and I don't know what other people believe, but I believe that like God or universe or whatever it is you believe will reward you in the end for standing true to your convictions. So it might 100%. Be a little bit of a difficult journey. There might be some really dark moments in the journey, but like the end result of what that journey will produce will be such a more rewarding and fulfilling life, and a life that you can feel really proud of and connected to, right? Because when you were standing, you were just the most raw, authentic version of yourself in every single way. That's exactly what you're going to attract to you. So you may feel alone because you're surrounded by a bunch of other people that maybe don't, share those same similar core values as you. But when you're that raw, authentic version of yourself, that's exactly who you attract. And, that's why when we met at that event, we were like, how are we homies? Like instantly. Yeah. Like we were like, sorry, we've been talking a lot. We should get back to, the event. But it's like, I think that's what happens, right? Like had you never done that, you would not have been at that event, and you and I wouldn't have met at that event. So I think it's just really a testament that when you stand true to your convictions, life does reward you in the end.
Well, this is what I always say. If you try and appease everybody, you will appease nobody. Mm-hmm. And so if you know that to be true, then maybe instead of trying to appease everybody by, I'm going to be quiet, or I'm not going to share what I think, be authentic to who you are. Mm-hmm. And your message is going to resonate with the right people. Mm-hmm. And then that message is going to attract the right people.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if you saw it. I shared it, I think yesterday, and I get these messages all the time. And it's like, this particular one is, hey, I'm a police officer in Australia. We're going through really hard times right now, but I'm an avid listener of your show. And by listening to your words and how you articulate them, it has given me the courage to stand up against the system.
Wow.
And now I don't know exactly what he means or how he's going to stand up against the system. But the reason why that felt so powerful to me, and I shared it, is because I'm just a guy talking into a microphone. Mm. And there is a person on the other side of planet Earth that heard my words and has decided to change the trajectory of their life and be a better version of themselves. Mm. So our words matter. Mm-hmm. Don't just sit back and be silent to try and appease everybody. Speak your mind, talk to the people that will listen to your message, mm-hmm. and it's going to resonate with them and it's going to help them. And I'm no different. Like, I listen to people all the time. Mike Glover, like I just mentioned, is one of them. Mm-hmm. Andy Stump. I like Joe Rogan. I like Jocko. Mm-hmm. Like, I like to listen to these people. I like to listen to their perspectives, and it makes me think about myself.
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
I can be better. And so if you feel in your heart that you have a message that you want to share, don't care how it's going to be received.
Mm.
You put it out there because that's you.
Mm.
And inevitably, the right people will receive it, and then it builds your network.
Mm-hmm.
And now my inbox is plugged full of messages. And like some of them, like I literally cry when I read them.
Yeah.
Like I had a woman write me a couple months ago, and she goes, "My marriage was in the dumps. My husband was just depressed all the time. We weren't communicating." And she goes, "And he was a varsity wrestler his whole life as a child, but he got out of athletics. He was way overweight now." And she goes, "I made him listen to some of your shows. And he said, you know what? I used to be a fighter. I can be a fighter again." He went and signed up at a jiu-jitsu academy. He's training all the time. And she goes, "Our marriage is the best it's been in 10 years because he has decided to become the best version of himself again."
Wow.
And it's, you know, when I first started getting into this world, I was like, who's going to listen to fucking me? I'm just a guy, right?
Yeah.
But then I started realizing like we all have value to share.
Mm-hmm.
I get value from the people I interact with and my listeners just as much as they get value from me.
Yeah.
And the reality of what podcasting is, it's a campfire conversation with the right people. We're just using a new technology to be able to communicate in a way that we haven't before, but it's the same thing. And it shouldn't be a strange concept that by sharing ideas, by speaking to each other, by sending each other messages, it can make us reflect on ourselves and change the trajectory of our life. And I see it all the time now. And it's seriously probably the most rewarding aspect of doing these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, kind of going off what you mentioned, it's important to recognize that the small things that we may see as insignificant can actually make some of the biggest differences in people's lives, right? I can definitely identify with what you're saying. There's been so many times where I put out a podcast, right? And maybe I think that it wasn't my best podcast, or I, in my head, kind of beat myself up about it, right? Because I've been doing this a long time now. And then I get messages about that exact podcast, the one that I thought sucked, the one that I thought I dropped the ball in, that I just wasn't, you know, performing my best. People are like, hey, this one really impacted me. This is what I did after. These were my action steps, right? Because I'm really big on implementing action steps. So I try to like give people an action step at the end of the show. And seeing people's life change just from sharing this message that I felt was on my heart is, like you said, one of the most rewarding things. So it's incredible to see you stand up and be the leader that you are. You know, I know that you've had so many different experiences, from military to police to entrepreneurship to black belt and jiu-jitsu, and you honing in and having all of that, bringing that, all of that to the table, like the mindset, the character, the values, the life lessons that you're able to just give back to the community, give back to the worldwide community, is so valuable and so insane. So I know I speak for the audience and everyone listening. Just thank you for what you do. Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for sharing the hard things. Thank you for speaking your truth. Thank you for standing up and being strong and showing people the way. I heard there's a saying called Rangers lead the way. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate that. There's getting positive feedback from people like you, from Andy, to people that I've never met on my inbox. Like, it's what this is all about. And I'm really grateful for the journey that I'm on.
Yeah. You know, I'm really thankful and grateful that a regular guy, as you said, decided to start a podcast, right? Because, you know, Andy, myself, you know, we don't have these experiences of literally fighting for freedom, of living in these other countries, of doing all the things that you did, your time in the military. We don't have these experiences of being in direct law enforcement and having, you know, everything that comes along with that. So truthfully, your perspective is something that I think is like so valuable. It's like treasure, you know? So for you to actually take that next step and share it with the world, oof, that's awesome. And it's just, it's really valuable. So we're going to wrap up the podcast here. But before we do, I wanted to ask just one quick question. We did get a few questions in, and we've covered most of them through the content of the show. But just any last piece of advice to law enforcement officers that are currently currently working, currently doing patrol, or whatever it is that they're doing, just any last bit of advice in regards to mandates, in regards to, you know, what their higher ups are telling them to do, and just how to navigate doing what you're told and standing for what you believe is right and standing for America.
I think that that's a great question to wrap it up with, because I get that question all the time. And the answer always remains the same, is that you have to operate on a professional level in a capacity that does not violate your own moral conscience or your own ethics. Like, we know what the law is.
Mm-hmm.
We serve the law and we uphold the law. But there's something called discretion in law enforcement. And the reason that they give law enforcement officers the tool of discretion is because no two scenarios are the same.
Mm.
So you have to look at a situation, you have to know how you can legally apply the law, but then you also have to know or feel what is morally or ethically correct. And if the things that you are being asked to do violate that conscience inside of you, and they violate your moral or your ethical code, that's not something that you should stand up against. It is something you are obligated to stand up against because the citizens are depending on it right now for the people in positions of power to defend their liberties and their freedoms.
Mm.
And I always tell cops this: if standing up for the right thing costs you your job, don't let that be something that scares you or prohibits you from behaving in a way that you feel like you should, because there is an entire world out there.
Mm.
The profession of law enforcement is a job. That is it. It gives you a paycheck, it pays your mortgage, it puts food on the table. But if that's the only reason you are there, just know you can be successful in anything you put your mind to.
Mm-hmm.
And to see where I was a year and a half ago to where I'm at today, both, like I said, spiritually, emotionally, but also financially. And the financial side of things is strange for some people to bring up.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say, like, I'm not bringing it up to boast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm bringing it up because I've been able to find a path that
Mm-hmm.
works for me. I can support my family. I can cover my bills. And you need to know that if you are a police officer, you are a smart, capable person,
Mm-hmm.
and you can do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do not let these governors and these mayors make you violate your moral code for a paycheck, because there's paychecks everywhere.
Mm.
And you can walk away today and you will be okay. You have to know that. We live in America. Opportunity is endless here.
Mm.
And if you've been a cop for 15 years and you're chasing your pension, and I get that, that's a stressful thing to walk away from. But if you need to walk away from it because they're making you behave in a way that you feel is unethical, you're obligated to. And just know, you put yourself out there, you stay motivated, you seek relationships with the right people. Like you just said, the universe will give back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a religious person, but I am a very spiritual person.
Mm-hmm.
And the last year has really emphasized that, because I've experienced it firsthand. When you stand behind your own moral convictions, you will find success in this life. But most importantly, more importantly than the paycheck that you receive, you'll be proud of who you look at in the mirror.
Mm.
And if you're not proud of that person, that's something that there's no way out of that. You have to make sure that you're good with yourself first, and then the rest of life comes together. You have to believe that.
Wow, that was incredibly powerful. Thank you for openly sharing your story, the successes and everything, because I think what it does is it inspires people to make that step in their own lives, and it shows them a pathway, right? Because honestly, if you did it, they can do it as well. So I think you being that person to lead the way and to show them, hey, like, this is what I did, this was the result of it, it'll inspire them to be able to do that for themselves. So thank you for the encouragement. Thank you for the wisdom. Thank you for just everything that you shared on this show was so, so wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me. It was incredible. I appreciate it.
Of course. Okay, guys, you know the drill. All of the links are going to be down below. Please make sure and give Greg a follow on social media. It will be linked below, as well as check out Guns and Geese. Don't forget that. It's going to be March 4th. Is that correct?
March 4th, 5th, and 6th.
4th, 5th, and 6th in New Orleans.
Yep.
And I will confirm me being there ASAP. But make sure you guys follow, support. If you enjoyed the show, do me a favor and rate and review the show. That's how the show grows, as well as tag both myself and Greg on Instagram and let us know your feedback. Let us know what was your favorite part of the show. What was something that really spoke to you? And if you felt like it was an important message, it needs to be heard, then do me a favor, and wherever you're watching it on, just go ahead and share it. So share the YouTube video, text it to a friend, put it on your Instagram stories, and let's spread the message, and let's inspire people to stand true to their convictions and to follow their heart, because when you do that, life will reward you for that. Thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of Evolve with Emily. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.